Hello there. Hope everything is going well. I'm Ahmad Sharifzadeh. I'm the author of two books on how to write English research papers, in addition to another book on academic English grammar, all of which were published by Amazon in the English language. In addition, I'm the editor of two other English books, one of which was published by Amazon. In addition to teaching and giving consultations on the issue, I also edit and proofread papers, research papers in English, in some cases if the time allows, but a team of expert editors and proofreaders under my supervision is constantly doing this, and you can count on their help and support when you need. Today, I'm going to talk about the important issues with regard to writing research papers. Not only writing research papers, but also writing theses, dissertations, and proposals. We all know that different factors, or better to say different parameters, will also play a role or influence our success when we start writing a research paper or when we want to publish a piece of academic text. Whether it is a thesis, dissertation, or a research paper of any type. Also, we know that some of those factors or some of those parameters are common to all. Common to theses and dissertations on the one hand, and common to papers on the other hand, even common to proposals. So today I'm going to focus on those shared or common principles among all, so that the attendees, the fellow attendees from different levels, from different disciplines, for different purposes can make the most of this lesson. Normally, I teach this course at 5+1 steps, which lasts more than 20 hours. But today I'm gonna briefly touch upon it. The steps, the 5+1 steps are as follows. The first step, in my view, is to select topic and research questions the best possible. The second step is surprisingly to select journal in which you want to publish your paper, or the conference in which you want to present your paper. The publication outlet or your destination. The third step is to investigate effective factors, read reliable sources, and take notes. After these three steps, you have to go and collect data. This is called this step I call step +1. In this step, you have to collect data, analyze it, interpret it, and finally visualize it or present it. In this step, you have to get help from your professors, your supervisor, your advisor, or a team of experts, professors at the department in your university. But I have a separate course, a comprehensive course on how to collect data, analyze, interpret, and finally visualize. I also recommend you attend that course to gain a mastery over the issue. After this step, the +1 step, you have to go to the fourth step, which is the drafting phase. In this step, in the fourth step, you have to write, revise, and edit the manuscript. And then you have to go to the last phase and last step, which is dedicated to actually submitting your paper or manuscript and then getting it published. In the following few minutes, I'm gonna talk about them, each step separately and unfortunately as briefly as possible because the time will not allow us more than that. Before starting our own story, let's look at a story from a fellow farmer. You know that farmers around the world cultivate, or better to say, farm wheat or barley. We know that. And if you ask them which one is more important, wheat or hay, barley or hay, what will be their answer? For sure, a majority of them will answer you wheat is more important than hay, or barley is more important than hay. Do you know why? Because it is more expensive. Although the hay is longer, but the wheat or barley is shorter, the shorter one is more important than the longer one. Actually, because it is more expensive, because it is considered more important by the farmer, by the users. That's the reason why, in the eye of a farmer, the hay is the secondary product, but wheat or barley is the primary product. Researchers have the same story, or better to say, similar story. In this case, we are producing two products. One is primary and the other one is secondary. Publication of a paper and solving a real life problem. You know that every research should have a logic behind. And I believe that if you're an expert researcher, you have to have the logic behind your research. And the logic is that you want to actually solve a real life problem. This is the logic, not publishing a paper. So, in the eye of an expert researcher, publication of a paper is the secondary product, but solving a real life problem is the primary product. And if you solve a real life problem, you will be able to make money and publish your paper. But publication of a paper is not necessarily end up with making money. You should consider the primary product and secondary product correctly and not mistake one for the other one. Actually, publishing a paper for the solving a problem and vice versa. So here we have two products as a researcher, and that's the reason why we have to decide better which one is more important for us, for me, for you. Most of the time, I expect you to consider publication of a paper as a secondary product, but solving a real life problem as a main product, as the primary product. So focus on solving a real life problem. This is the first mistake inexperienced researchers make. The mistake which will lead them to other mistakes, which will lead them to decide incorrectly, which will lead them not to distinguish what they ought to do from what they don't have to do. So they do what is wrong. They do whatever it is wrong. So that's the reason why we end up with nothing. Most of inexperienced researchers, most of novice researchers, at the end of the day, make something nonsense, useless, worthless. So we have to decide better here. Decide the primary product and secondary product. So be as wise as that farmer, that fellow farmer, and don't make this childish mistake. I believe that you have to consider this important point. Always keep in mind that publishing a paper is the secondary product, but solving a real life problem is the primary product. So, based on this premise, you should decide what to do and what not to do. Since the inexperienced researchers take this first step mistakenly, they take the other steps, the following steps also mistakenly, so that the end result is unacceptable. Take care. Now let's back to our own story. Let's look at the right steps we have to take in order to kill two birds with one shot. The first bird is solving a real life problem. The primary bird is that. The second bird is actually publishing a paper, publication of a Q1 paper. Now I'm gonna elaborate on those key steps, 5 plus 1 steps, as I said. In the first step, we have to select the best topic and research questions. Here we should remember that fellow farmer and decide whether wheat is important or the hay. This means that if we are wise enough, we should deal with the current problems of the society, real life problems of the society, worries and concerns of the society. I mean, the questions under investigations, under my investigation, your investigation, should be the real life problem today. And if they have already been resolved, this means that spending time, money, and your effort by the researcher, I mean you, might end up with nothing, might be nonsense at the end. Makes no sense. So if you try to find a good research topic or research questions, look at the current problems people face in the environment, on Earth, in the sky, or at the bottom of the oceans. An important point to consider is that if you want to look for problems, I mean real life problems, you must look for the problems people face in the EU, European Union, or the United States of America. So that at the end of the day, you can sell your products, export your products to a larger number of people, to a larger number of users, to a larger number of customers. I mean, if something is still a problem in the EU or in the United States of America, for sure it is a problem. I mean, it's still a problem in Asian countries, in most Asian countries, in most Eastern countries, in most underdeveloped or developing countries. And if you solve this problem for the first time, you can export or you can sell your products to both Eastern countries and Western countries, to both developed countries and underdeveloped countries, and even developing countries. This means that you'll have a higher number of prospect users, prospect customers. But if you wish to solve a real life problem in an underdeveloped country, say in Afghanistan, you can rarely export your findings, your products, your solutions to a more developed country in which the problem has already been resolved. Now you might ask yourself, what should I do if I want to find such an unresolved problem? in a developed country. Where should I go? In my view, you can, for example, go to the website of MIT or Oxford University or a top ranked university and then look for the titles or the research questions or the topics of MA students or PhD candidates. Why? To determine what they are still working on, to determine their worries and concerns right now in 2023, 2024, 2025, and even in upcoming years. The up-to-date problems. This means that you can figure out the real-life problems and worries of the Western countries, of that country at a time. An important point is that this is an up-to-date topic to work on. I mean, killing two birds with one shot. A topic, this is one criterion here, and it is of desired criteria. It is up to date. A topic which is up to date. Then you can model after those people, those researchers, those PhD candidates, those professors, and make some changes if necessary, adapted to your situation, to your conditions, and start your own research process under your own conditions, changing variables, changing circumstances, and then starting your own research. But you should try to be a head and shoulder above others, about your rivals, about that PhD candidate, that MA student, or that professor in the EU, in the United States of America, so that you can compete with them and succeed. For example, you can use a more efficient way than him to achieve the same goal. You can actually go a less expensive procedure than him or her to achieve the same goal. I mean, in total, you should go a shortcut way to achieve the same goal. And that will make you actually able to compete with them, compete with him or her, and finally succeed. Or the other way is this. You can look at the list of most recent publications of the high quality journals or high quality publishers, top journals, and figure out the topics which attracted the attention of a majority of researchers. If you want to find a hot topic, the concerns of the society, the worries of the society, you can look at the most common publications, most recent publications, which are most common, by high quality journals, by Q1 journals, and then figure out the problem, the real life problem, the worries and concerns of the society at the time, the scholars. This means that if you spend your time on the topic where other well-known researchers, well-known scholars are also spending time, you'll come up with a worthy outcome, worthy of attention. But you might ask yourself, how can I understand which topic is interesting to scholars? That's easy. Just look at the titles and keywords of recent publications, most recent publications. Simply look at the main variables of those publications. The most common keywords or more frequently measured variable will show you the trend of majority of researchers, majority of scholars, actually their interest towards some topics more than others, towards some keywords more than others, towards some variables more than others. Actually, this is the place where you have to spend your time. These are the topics which you have to actually deal with. You know that finding a topic is not enough, and you have to go deep in detail as much as possible. So I strongly recommend you not to forget to narrow down and go to the deepest level possible, so that you can select the topic from among the most specific issues, differentiating you from others, from your rivals, from the competitors, from other scholars, from less experienced researchers, helping you stand out and shine, putting your name among the name of or the names of experts, well-known scientists, and becoming known, making you known as an expert. Working on a more specific topic will put your name in the list of scientists or experts, but working on a general issue, general actually topic, will not put your name among the list of scientists or top scholars, researchers. The same as a general doctor versus an expert doctor. A general practitioner versus a heart surgeon. One is a general doctor, general, and the other one is a specific person, specialist person, a heart surgeon, on the other hand. So you have to actually here differentiate yourself from others by working on the most specific topics possible. But you should also be aware of the fact that the more specific the topic, the more expertise you need to have, the more equipped laboratory you need to have at the university, the more exact data collection and data analysis procedures and tools, instruments you need to have, and so on and so forth. That's the reason why inexperienced researchers cannot work on more specific topics, because they don't have actually a laboratory which is equipped enough. They don't have the expertise to work on that specific topic, that the most specific topic. This means that the more specific the topic, the harder your task, your duty, responsibility. Therefore, the result at the end will be considerably different from others, from other researchers, making you distinguished from others and actually putting your name among the name of highly specialized people. That's the starting point, and you should differentiate yourself from others. But if you do research on outdated topics and investigate outdated actually research questions, or choose a less important topic, as an architect of a research paper, you weaken the foundation of your building of research. Then you can count on the strengths of your foundation. Then you can build a skyscraper of research on that weak foundation. And if, irrespective of this weakness this weakness in your foundation. You try to build a skyscraper. Eventually, that skyscraper will fall down and kill people, kill your results, destroy whatever you've done so far. An English proverb says, a good beginning makes a good ending. A good research topic makes a good resolution to a problem, makes a good publication of a Q1 paper. The starting point is here. That's the reason why I believe that this is the most important step to take. The first step is the most important step to take. So you should be wise enough and careful enough. And the following steps, in the following step, the second step, is the other cornerstone of the research process. Irrespective of the fact that most researchers don't do or don't take this step at all, or postpone it to the end, but you have to do it here, right now. The second important step is this one. In the research process, the second important step is to selecting publication outlet. A journal or conference in which you want to publish or present your paper. I believe that you have to select it right now, even before drafting your paper, even before putting a pen on a paper, before drafting your manuscript. Unfortunately, this is what most inexperienced researchers do at the very end. Postpone it to the end. When, as the proverb says, the die is cast. And we know that what is done cannot be undone. The past cannot change. We make mistakes, but we are not able to change them, to actually correct our mistakes, because the die is cast. Do you know why I emphasize on selecting publication outlet, journal or conference right here? I have a number of reasons. The first reason is that you can actually use the journal you select here or the conference you select here as a source of info. You need to download PDFs. You need to read some theses, dissertations, papers, books right here before drafting your text, before drafting your thesis, dissertation, paper, proposal. Then you need resources, PDFs of those sources, PDFs of papers, theses, books, dissertations, proposals. The place where you can find some of them, not necessarily all, but some of them. If you actually select the journal here, then you can go and download whatever you need. Most of the time you can download PDFs of papers here, the best place. You can check to see whether your topic is at the center of focus here or not. You can go and look at the titles of previously published papers and check to see your topic is among those topics or not. Okay, just by thumbing through the titles, the keywords, the abstracts, okay, of that specific conference, that specialized conference or journal. Most recent publications of high quality journals or conferences can be looked at here. You should look at them here and then figure out if or whether your topic is among those topics or not. Is whether your topic is among the concerns of the society or not, the society of actually researchers. Here you can decide if your topic is not among them, then you can put it aside, and then find another topic, find another set of research questions. The important point is that you should choose one or actually few specialized journals or conferences here, not journals which publish on general issues, general actually topics, various topics. Jack of all trades, master of none. I mean, if you select a handful of specialized journals, you don't need to search on the web for PDFs of research papers, because you can download whatever you need from the website of those specialized journals, those specialized conferences. You directly go to the website of this journal or this conference, those conferences, and download what you need to read. You can go directly to a jewelry store and then download what you need. Jewelry store and buy the gold you need. You are downloading the most purified jewelry papers, right from the producer. Okay. But if you don't find a jewelry store here, the best publisher here, you have to wander on Google or other search engines for PDFs of papers, theses, and dissertations and the like. That is much more difficult than this way, I said. But how will you be sure which source is reliable to read and cite your paper? I will tell you. There are a large number of reasons, criteria. I will look at some of them. Okay. The second reason is that after drafting your paper, you have to submit it somewhere and get it published. You have to publish or present it somewhere. So it's better to decide on in advance, to decide on the publication outlet in advance. And if you select the destination in advance right here before drafting your text, you can better adapt yourself to the styles, the guidelines, the standards or expectations of that specific journal or conference. This means that if you select it here, you'll be able to get the approval without wasting your time, without having forced to do and redo the same things once and again, without being forced to revise several times, and without being forced to do repetitive things several times and again. If you know the preferences of that journal, the editors of that journal, the reviewers of that journal, the readers of that journal, the officials and readers of that journal, then you can prepare them with what they need, what they wish to see, to read, what they expect to read. If you meet their expectations, the rest is easy. Getting approval is much easier. This means that if, for example, you know the level of readers' English language competence, I mean English language proficiency, you can actually decide better which grammatical structures, which grammatical complexity and lexical complexity actually to adapt in your text. Neither harder grammatical actually complexity or advanced, more advanced, nor elementary, nor simpler. I mean, at the end, your text will be reader friendly, user friendly. I mean, if you can write a reader friendly text, that at the end of the day, it will be more cited and more read. Read frequently and cited more. The more you meet the needs, I mean their needs, the reader's needs, the more the probability of your text being read, being cited, the more the probable citations, the number of probable citations, and the higher your H index, and the more your chance of being employed by Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and companies like that. Actually, what you do here is similar to what a tailor does. Imagine that you go to a tailor and ask him or her to sew a piece of clothing for you. What will be his first action or her first action? Will he start sewing right after, or will he start asking some questions, a few questions, and measuring your height, your waist, and then start cutting the cloth? Which one? For sure, the answer is that he will answer, or she or he will ask me some questions and then measure me, my sizes, and then start actually cutting the cloth, the material. Asking questions with regard to this, actually the design of the cloth, the use of the cloth, whether it will be a sport cloth or actually a wedding ceremony, a clothing for wedding ceremony, for example. Then he can decide better which color better suits that type of use. Wedding suit might be different in color in comparison with a suit for, or a set of actually clothing for sports. Do you know why? Do you know why he asks questions here or she asks questions here? Because he or she wants to decide here. You know that after cutting the cloth, no backward is possible. No going back is possible. If he or she doesn't ask here and doesn't measure my size or your size, the clothing will either be tight or loose. Either way, he or she had to change, had to alter the clothing. This means that the revision will be inevitable, indispensable. He should spend time, or she should spend time once again to actually correct his mistake or her mistake, to make it more tight or loose. I mean, to make it fit my size. Because the first time he made a mistake and made a cloth for me which is too tight or loose than me, then he have to change it. Either the cloth I mean the type of class, the design, the color, the size, or some other factors should be changed here. Then he should first actually decide better not to make any mistake so that he don't have to do the same thing again and again. Actually, this is the case when you start writing a paper. A researcher is a tailor who chooses articles, research papers, theses, dissertations from words, concepts, and theories, and the like, in accordance with the actually expectations of the university at which he or she wants to, from which he or she wants to get degree, or based on the expectations of the journal in which or conference in which he or she wants to publish his paper, present his paper. So, as a tailor of a research paper, you have to decide in advance. You have to make important decisions here. But those decisions should be based on some criteria. I have a list of criteria. I will look at some of them, but there are 40 other criteria you should consider also. Okay, the first criterion is this: language of publication. It matters. You might ask yourself how language of publication will influence my life, my actually academic career, my CV, my H-index, and a lot more things. My chance of being employed by Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and others. Let's look at. The answer is this: if you publish your paper in English, for example, once, and once again in German or Italian or Russian, which one will be read more and cited more? For sure, the English version. If you publish the same paper twice at the same time simultaneously, but in different languages, once in English and the other time in one other language, the English version most of the time, in most cases, will be cited more often than the other version. Because a lot of academicians, researchers, students, scholars, professors like you know English better than Chinese, German, French, Russian, and other languages. I mean, the number of readers in English is higher than the number of readers in other languages. And most people are learning English. That's the reason why they can read it better, easier. Then the number of citations will go up. If you know German, you know that. If you know French, then it's being published in other languages than English will automatically decrease the number of citations, the number of probable citations, the number of citations your paper will receive. This means that your H-index will not increase, will be weaker. Your CV will be weaker. Your chance of being employed by Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and others will be lower. Or another criterion, the second one, language of publication was the first one. Let's look at the second one. The subscription fee. It might also influence your academic career, but how? You know that the more the subscription fee, the less the number of people who can afford to pay that money and buy that PDF of your published paper and read your text and then cite your paper. I mean, if the subscription fee is higher, it'll limit your citation givers. It will limit your citation givers, your probable citation givers. And that's why your H-index will not increase. That's why your CV will be weaker than a person who published his paper or her paper in a journal which is of a lower subscription fee. The third criterion, name of publisher, is also important. It has a big share when readers want to decide whether to read a text, a piece of academic text or not. For example, if you publish your paper by Oxford University Press, for example, automatically your paper will receive higher citations than when you publish the same paper by a less known publisher. For example, a university press in Lebanon. And that's the reason why you should actually take into account the name of publisher, the place of publication, the country of publication, the language, the subscription fee, and a lot more factors. Because all of them will influence your career, your CV, your chance of being employed by Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and others. Wanted or unwanted, they will influence. Let's look at the third step. In the third step, we have to take into account a number of effective factors and read the sources here and then take notes. First, let's look at the effective factors, such as publishers, the best publishers in the world, readers, reviewers, and so on and so forth. Which one plays a more important role here? How can I distinguish goods from bad, good ones from bad ones? Let's look at some of them. For example, scholars. You should know who the scholars in your field, in your discipline and sub-discipline actually is or are. This means that you should know the most, actually, the best scientists of your discipline and sub-discipline, the best researchers in your field, and then read their papers, their publications, specifically the most recent publications, and do your best to make the most of them. Take advantage of those best publications. And if you want to figure out who the scholar is, that's an easy question. Who the scholar is. You should, for example, look into, take into account the country in which they work, the university with which they are affiliated, they work at. A professor at Oxford University, a professor at University of a university in Saudi Arabia, for example. Which one is more important? The courses he teach or she teach, the number of publications, and more important than that, the quality of publications. H-index. Simply look at his H-index. And then you can figure out who the scholar is. You can compare people based on some factors, the theories he proposed, the hypotheses he proposed, the university at which he teaches, and a lot more factors, and then decide who is the scholar and who is more important than the other. Who is the best scientist, the top ranking scientist? This means that if you actually cite the sources published by that person or written by that person, authored by that person, these scholars, you can strengthen the foundation of your building. As an architect of research paper, you should strengthen the foundation of your research paper. That's the actually the approach you have to take here. Make your paper stronger and earthquake resistant. Citing some sources written by scholars, published by best publishers. This way you can actually help improve the strength of your paper, your own paper. The other effective factor here is publishers. You have to identify best publishers in the world and read the books, papers, theses, dissertations, and the like from those publishers. If you want to rely only on reliable sources, putting aside others, less important, less reliable sources, and only citing sources which are reliable, published by best publishers. If you wish to do so, actually you have a kind of easy task here, easy responsibility here. You should go to Google or some other search engines, but Google is preferable, and simply type top publishers of books, for example, top university publishers, or top research publishers, or what you want to search. And Google automatically will give you a list of publishers in a descending order of popularity, fame, okay, quality. Then you can go directly to the website of those publishers. I mean those top publishers. From the top of the list, go down. And then download what you need. Download the best books, the best research papers, the best thesis and dissertations, the best proposals, whatever you need, without wasting your time. I said you go directly to the jewelry store. Okay, go directly and buy the most purified gold from there, from that store. In some cases, you actually have to you want to have a comprehensive description of research. You know that research papers are shorter, then they are not as comprehensive as a thesis or dissertation. If you wish to find a more comprehensive actually version, it's better to go and download theses and dissertations, specifically if you are a novice researcher, if you are an inexperienced researcher, if you are a starter, because they are telling the whole story here, the whole story of research in more detail than paper. Okay, if you don't know how to download, how to find, just search top thesis or dissertation actually databases. Type top thesis or dissertation databases very easily, and then you will face OATD, Open Access Thesis and Dissertation, a database, or a lot more other databases actually where you can download what you need, theses and dissertations in different languages, published in different years, actually defended different universities, different countries, and then you can decide which to read and cite and which to put aside. And if you can't find the intended result, you can just add the word alternative at the end of what you want to search. For example, you looked for OATD, Open Access Thesis and Dissertation Databases, and then you didn't find what you need there. Then you want to find a replace for OATD. Write OATD, at the end of that, add the word alternative. That's easy. Then click enter. Google will actually give you a lot more results which are similar to that the first one. The other factor, or the other influential factor here in this third step, is editor-in-chief and reviewers or editors. You also should know the editor-in-chief, who he is or who she is, and not he himself, not she herself, but his or her preferences. You know that she or he is the first person who makes decisions with regard to your paper. So if you are well aware of his or her preferences, their styles, the styles he or she prefer more than others, then you can manage better to convince him or her. If as a chess player here, you know the rival better, the rival is that person, that editor-in-chief, then you can better chessmate him or chessmate her. Then you can better defeat him, defeat her. Okay? And also we know that he is or she is the last person who makes decision with regard to my paper, because he or she is collating the decisions of reviewers and make the final decision, and will tell you that your paper is accepted for publication or rejected. Okay? If you know him, you know who your rival in this chess game is, actually you can better chessmate him. Otherwise, you will actually lose the game, this game. The game of publishing your paper in that specific journal or conference. And unfortunately, you will receive an email telling you, we regret to inform you that your paper doesn't meet the requirements of this journal. This is the worst possible answer, the worst possible email you can receive throughout the submission and revision process. Throughout the last step. This is the worst email you can receive. We regret to inform you that your paper doesn't meet our standards. And if you don't know your rivals in a chess game, then you will face such an email. There are some other reasons why I recommend you investigate effective factors in advance and then draft your paper, but the time limit will not allow me to discuss all of them here now. So if you wish, you can attend the lengthy course, the comprehensive course, and then decide better. Okay? In addition to exploring effective factors, You are to select right material here and read them and then take notes and then cite them. We know that we have to read all sources, Q1 to Q4. But we also know that the time limit won't let us read all them. Then we have to select. Then we have to select the best ones. And we know that the best ones are Q1 and Q2, and then the quality will decrease. So we have to decide which one to read. But I recommend you not to cite sources which are Q1, not to cite sources which are Q3. Just cite sources which are Q1. Because if you want to have a good product, you have to use good raw material. Okay, if you want to have to produce a good product, then you have to use good raw materials. That's the reason why I recommend you just cite sources which are Q1 papers, the best theses and dissertations, the best books. If so, what do we need to read Q4 journals as well? Because we have to have a mastery over the issue before starting the research. Because we have to be well aware of what was done before starting the research. Because we have to know all theories and hypotheses with regard to that specific issue before starting to write our own research. Actually, before starting to collect data. That's the reason why we need to read sources from Q1 to Q4, but not necessarily we cite all of them. We just cite Q1 papers, Q1 sources. Reading sources here will have dual benefits, maybe dual plus one. What are the benefits? The first one is that you can have or gain mastery over the issue or what was done before on that specific subject, that specific topic, research topic. And more important than that, by reading those sources, we can learn how to use cliches, how to use fixed phrases, how to use grammatical and lexical complexity or rules in a research paper. We can take notes or borrow some fixed phrases or cliches from those papers, from those theses and dissertations, and then take them to our own. So we can better guess or learn or figure out what the journal or conference expect me, what level of language proficiency, what level of grammatical complexity, which words are more preferred than others, which tenses are more preferred than others, which voices, passive voice or active voice, are more preferred than others. We can figure out all them just by reading papers, just by reading theses and dissertations. If you want to write a thesis, then read thesis. If you want to write a dissertation, then read dissertations more often. If you want to write a paper, for example, a research paper, then more often you should read research papers. When reading the introduction of a paper, or the abstract of a paper, or the other parts or sections and subsections, you can figure out which grammatical structures, tenses, voices, and so on and so forth are more common than others, and then you can apply the same in your paper, in your text, in your academic text. But reading sources, I mean reading papers, has another actually benefit here. 2 plus 1. The third one is this. In addition to actually the above mentioned two benefits, as I discussed before, reading research of any type, including papers, theses, dissertations, proposals even, will also shed light on the methodologies, on the approaches to go and actually or to take and solve the same problem. You can learn which methods will take you to the same destination, which ways or which actually approaches will take you to the same destination. You have a problem in mind, you want to solve that problem, and you read the literature, the previous publications, and you see that one actually took this way, the other one took this way, the other one took this way, and went to the same destination. And you will figure out that there are a large number of, or a number of ways to get there. But you should go the fastest way, you should go the actually the shortcut way, you should go the easiest way, you should go the less actually expensive way, or the least expensive way, the cost effective way, so that you can compete with others, so that you can be considered as an inventor, so that you can be considered as a scientist, as a top researcher. And here you also should actually take into account your limitations and their limitations, and decide which approach to take, which way to go. Here we have another step plus 1, as I said before. In this step, you know that you don't write anything. You actually have selected the best topic up to now. You have selected the publication outlet in the second step. After the second step, you actually investigated the effective factors, read some sources, and took notes. And here you have to collect data, analyze it, interpret it, and finally visualize or present it. You know that data collection and analysis, and even interpretation and presentation, differs to a great extent from one discipline to another, from one subject or topic to another. So even after attending my course, the course I introduced before, you need to take into account these differences. I mean, the differences between your discipline and the discipline of another person, between your topic and the other topic. And you have to actually ask for advices from your professors, your supervisor, your advisor, your team of professors at the department, so that you can manage discipline-specific differences or features and apply them appropriately, so that you don't fail at the end. For example, we have a lot of lectures in that course, the course I taught. One is with regard to chart chooser. What is a chart chooser? You know, a chart chooser is a quadripartite chart or diagram based on the 4 types of data, which will help you decide which chart to use. Chart chooser. It will help you decide which chart is more suitable to your data. Chart chooser will help you decide which chart to use when, for example, you have actually static data, which shows the percentages of, say, the participants of this course, the share of participants in this course. Imagine that 64% are females and 36 are missed. You have to select from among different charts to show this, but which chart is better. That chart chooser will help you decide. It says that it's better to use pie chart, but you should know also other important things, or important actually facts with regard to drawing pie charts. For example, we know that when we are drawing pie chart, we have to rank order the actually data. Here, the percentages, we have to rank order them in a descending format, starting from bigger data, then going to actually smaller data. We have 64% and then 36. Then we have to put actually the 64 right 12 from the 12 clockwise, and then go to the left of 12, and then put the actually smaller data. If we have 3, we have to put the biggest one first, to the right of 12, number 12 o'clock, and then go to the smaller one, and then go to the smallest one. This means that drawing charts is not as easy as you might imagine. There are a large number of actually points we have to take into account when we draw a chart. So we can use chart chooser, and also actually the other lectures of that course, and do this step, or take this step +1, with the help of your supervisor, advisor, and other actually professors, the best possible way. That's the reason why I recommend you attend that course as well, if you wish. The fourth step, in your view, is the most important one, but not mine. You, or maybe some inexperienced researchers, might think that the fourth step is the most important one: writing, editing, and actually revising and editing. But I don't think so. I think that all steps are as important as the other one. The first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one are all equally important. But maybe some inexperienced researchers might think that one is more important than the other. If you ask me, I will tell you the first step is much more important than the second. The second is much more important than the third. The third is much more important than the fourth. I mean, the fourth step, writing itself, is not that important because it is the fourth step. But I said that the first one is much more important than the second is much more important than the third is much more important than the fourth, and so on and so forth. This means that the last steps are not that important, because you make the most important decisions first, in the first step, in the second step, not here. Here you just write, and that's easy. I believe that. The most feared, but the most easy. I mean, the easiest one. The fourth step is dedicated to writing, revising, and editing. I mean, in this step, after you've collected and analyzed data, you'll have to put the pen on your paper. I mean, you have to start writing the manuscript itself, the first draft. If you go through these steps as I've discussed so far, this step is much easier, because you don't have to actually do the same thing once and again. You don't have to make major changes after you draft your paper, after your first draft. Because most of what you write here is in accordance with the expectations or the guidelines or the actually requirements of that specific journal or that specific conference you've selected before. Then there is no need to change. Then there is no need to revision. So there will be no need to revise what you've written so far. Maybe some minor changes, some typos, some grammatical mistakes. And that's easy to actually get rid of those mistakes. In this step, when we write different sections, we have to stick to generic features in general or to specific features of that specific journal or conference in particular. You know that we have some generic features. For example, we use actually present tense more often in the introduction section and past tense more often in the methodology section. This is a generic feature, actually common among all papers. But some journals might have some specific features as well. For example, one will force you to write an abstract with a lower number of words than 200 words. Some others will let you write actually up to 250 words. This is a specific feature. As I said, we use actually present tense more often in the introduction section. Do you know why? Because in the introduction, we are talking about theories. We are talking about facts, definitions. And that's why we use present tense more often. But in the methodology section, we are talking about the actions the researcher had done or have done. Better say had done or did. And when we are going to report the actions of the researcher, we have to use past tense and preferably simple past tense. We use passive voice in the methodology section more often than the other sections. Because in the methodology section, we know that the doer of the actions is the researcher himself or herself. So there is no need to emphasize. So there is no need to tell again and again or to remind again and again the doer of the action. The actions are more important than the doer. That's the reason why we use passive voice more often in the methodology section than other than active voice. And in the introduction, the reverse is the case. We use most of the time the active voice in comparison with the passive voice. So we have to be careful with the use of active voice, passive voice, tenses, and a lot more things which are considered as common features or generic features in writing research papers, theses, dissertations, books, and others. In this step, in the fourth step, we have to write, revise, and edit. Here we have to write different sections and subsections of a research paper, including title, abstract, keywords, IMROD, introduction, method, results, and discussion, and then references and appendices. If you want to write the abstract, for example, you'd better stick to the model proposed by Highland. I prefer this model, but with some minor adaptations or some minor changes. Highland believed that an abstract should be of 5 moves. First introduction, then purpose, then method, then results or product, and at the end conclusion. But I believe that you should have another section at the end, another move at the end, another sentence at the end. That will be the implication of your findings, the use of your findings. I mean, you should have 5+1 moves in the introduction, sorry, in the abstract. I mean, you have to have an introductory part, then the purpose of the research should be discussed, then you have to talk about your methodology, then you have to tell the readers your results, and the penultimate one will be your conclusion. And at the end, I believe that you have to add your uses, I mean the uses of your findings, who can use and where your findings can be used, to what extent your findings can be useful. Those should be discussed in the last move of the abstract. And we also know that we have two types of abstracts, so-called structured and unstructured, or versus unstructured. In a structured abstract, we ought to put all moves, I mean all 5+1 moves, introduction, purpose, then method, then product or result, then conclusion, and at the end, implication. You should put all them together under one title into a single paragraph. But in a structured one, we have to have separate paragraphs, smaller paragraphs but separate, with a subtitle for each. At the top you write abstract, and underneath you should have smaller paragraphs, 3 lines, 4 lines, and you have to add a title or subtitle for each. 6 subtitles here. Okay. Then you should know also structured versus unstructured abstracts. Or in the introduction section, this is most of the time considered the first important section of IMROD, introduction, method, results, and discussion. This is the main second section of a research paper. From the top, you have abstract and then the introduction. And if you want to write this section, you can stick to the well-known CARS model proposed by Schwarz in 1990. Create a research space model. But you have to actually change and actually use it with minor adaptations, minor changes, so that you can meet the standards of that journal, so that you can meet what you need. Okay. In CARS model, it is argued that as an author, you have to centralize your topic. You have to attract the attention of readers to your topic. At the top of the introduction, you have to do this. In the first few sentences, you have to attract the reader's attention, telling them that your topic is innovative, is new, and telling them that a lot of researchers are doing on that right now, or it is at the center of focus right now. For example, you can use some cliches like this. Recently, there has been wide interest in, and you can fill in the blank. Actually, finish the sentence. Recently, there has been a wide interest in, and you can add what you need at the end of this cliche. In that cliche, you see recently, which shows the recency of your topic, the innovativeness of your topic, the newness of your topic. And there has been a wide interest. Wide interest shows that it attracted the attention of a lot of people, a lot of researchers. So you should use some cliches like that to show that your topic is at the center of focus. Or in recent years, there have been many papers describing, and you can finish the sentence. Or in recent years, researchers have become increasingly interested in, and then you can finish the sentence. Or if you want to stick to IMROD, I mean introduction, method, results, and discussion model, it's better to learn and apply the wine glass model or the hourglass model. The two names for the same model. Because it will help you actually funnel down the introduction and do the reverse in the discussion section. I mean, in the introduction, you should start with general concepts and go down to more specific ones, and at the end of the introduction you have to have the most specific concepts. Let's look at the example here. Some sentences taken from different paragraphs, I mean from the first, the second, the third, the fourth paragraph of one actually research paper. Let's look at the examples. Heart is one of the most vital body organs. This is the first sentence. Here we have heart. The second sentence, a number of researchers have conducted considerable amount of research on heart diseases. Here we have heart diseases. The first one is general heart. Here we have a more specific one, heart diseases, not heart health, not the anatomy of heart. Then we go down to the third paragraph, to a more specific one. Heart attack is among the most prevalent diseases which might make patients suffer from the side effects. Here we have heart attack, one of those heart diseases. At the top we had heart, in the second paragraph we had heart diseases. Here we have heart attack. This means that we are making it more specific. We are actually using more specific sentences, more specific concepts, going down, but actually making it less wide, less general. And the last sentence or the last paragraph of the introduction. Elderly patients suffer not just because of the heart attack alone, but because of their heart attack along with the other illness or other illnesses, which might even lead to their deaths. Elderly patients with heart attack. This means that I'm going to work on just elderly patients who suffer from heart attacks. This means that I am actually making my topic more specific and even the most specific as much as possible. I started from a more general term, heart, then go to heart diseases, then go to heart attack, and here we are talking about heart attack in elderly people. This means that in the introduction we are funneling down. We are starting with general concepts and going down to specific concepts. This is the wine glass model. And we do the reverse in the discussion section. This means that we are starting with specific or the most specific sentences in the discussion section and go down and making our sentences more general and more general. Let's look at some examples in the discussion section. For example, we might see these sentences in the discussion section. Based on the sample was 60 people. Based on the sample in this study, the findings show that cigarette smoking can accelerate lung cancer in women younger than 50. Women younger than 50 age. This is the most specific sentence directly taken from my own data. directly from taken from my own research. I'm gonna widen my sentences in the discussion section. The second paragraph, a sentence from the second paragraph. In addition, based on the findings of Smith, James, Sharifzadeh, whoever, it can also be argued that cigarette smoking directly can actually accelerate lung cancer in men younger than 50. My research was with regard to women, but someone else had done a research with regard to men. The same variables, but men. The third paragraph, even more general. These findings can be generalized to a larger population, and we can claim that cigarette smoking can directly accelerate lung cancer both in men and women younger than 50. The first one was with regard to women, the second one was with regard to men, and here I'm gonna generalize. I'm gonna telling the people that my research, when put together with the other ones, can end up with a general conclusion. I'm generalizing. And I'm telling the readers that my research, along with others, show that the findings can be used to both genders, both men and women. And if I go to the last sentence, go to the last one, go to the end of the discussion, you might see a sentence like this. In sum, it can be claimed that cigarette smoking can accelerate lung cancer both in men and women at any age, not younger than 50, at any age. Based on some research, I studied one aspect with a sample younger than 50, only women. Some other people actually investigated some other samples, some on men, some on women, some younger than 50, some older than 50. All in all, I can conclude that based on the available literature, based on the previous studies, we can decide this. We can argue that based on the findings, this is the case. So, at the end of the sentence, the findings of this research can be used to predict, diagnose, and cure lung cancer both in men and women at any age. This means that I am marketing my findings. I am selling my solution. I am exporting my solution to a Western country, to the EU, to the United States of America. And that was the reason why I told you to start a research on the problems, on the real life problems of a Western country, a modern country, a developed country. So that here, at the end of your discussion, you can export your findings. You can sell your findings. Here, by that sentence, by that last one, you are actually generalizing. You are generalizing. You are telling the readers that higher number of people, higher number of users can make use of my drug, can make use of my solution. But do you know why? Because we are trying to market, to convince the actually sponsors to sponsor me, to sponsor my research, to finance me, companies to finance me. And we have some reasons like this. In other words, we are trying to assure the readers that a wider number of people that a wider number of prospect users or customers from the same population can get rid of the same illness here in this example, taking my drug. If they take my drug, they can get rid of that illness. I mean, we collect data from a smaller sample, but we generalize it to a larger sample. That is what we do in the discussion section, but not in the introduction section. We do the reverse in the introduction section. We do the reverse in the introduction section so that if you are a professional reader, you can guess the title of my research, the research questions of my research based on the last sentences of my introduction, because they are the most specific sentences to my research. So you should be able to guess my title, my research questions, my hypotheses, and if you can't guess, this means that I am writing in an incorrect way. If you can't guess my title of research based on the last sentence of my introduction, this means that I am misplacing my sentences. I am misplacing the concepts. I am not actually aware of how to write my research. Because there is a generic feature, or there are generic features. There is a genre here, and we have to apply the generic features. As I said before, I believe that the first step is as important as the others, not more important than other ones. That's the reason why I said that if one is more important, the more important one is the first step. If one is more important, the more important one is the second step, not here, the fourth one. This means that if you don't choose the right topic at the top, don't choose the right publication outlet in the second step, you can't actually produce a good product. You can't actually convince the readers. And if you don't take the principles in these steps I discussed so far, you can publish your paper, even if your text is written by Shakespeare, edited by the most or the best editors of the world. If you don't go these steps as I discussed, you can't publish it right away. You have to revise and waste time until you get an approval from somewhere. Maybe from a less known publisher, maybe from a Q3 or Q4 publisher. That's why I emphasized on going these steps as I said before. This means that all steps discussed so far are as important as the other ones. I mean, 5 steps are as equal as each other, and you can't compensate for the weaknesses of one by passing the second or the third or the fourth better than others. And the last step is that you have to submit your paper and get it published. In this step, you have to prepare the manuscript and attachment files in accordance with the standards, the guidelines of the author, described on the website of the journal or conference, and upload them to the website most of the time. You have to upload those attachments and the manuscript and some other files. I hope that if you go these 4 steps or 4+1 preceding steps appropriately, as I discussed so far, you'll have the easiest task here. You just upload and wait some time, for example 1 week, 2 weeks, and then get the answer. Your paper is accepted for publication. This is the actually the answer we expect to receive. The email we expect to receive from the publisher. Before you want to submit your paper, you ought to check the guidelines for author. A section on the website of a journal or conference. And then check to see whether you applied the rules or not. If you don't, you have to actually correct it here before submitting. You don't have to actually skip any. If you skip, you have to revise. If you don't revise, you will actually get a rejection. And then you have to revise and then resubmit. It will cost time and effort. That was the reason why I told you to select the journal or conference in the second step. If you select the journal or conference in the second step, you read the website of that journal or conference. Then when you want to write your paper in the fourth step, you know what to do and what not to do. Then you apply those rules. Then you don't need to revise here. That was the reason why I emphasized that you have to select the journal or conference in the second step, not here. If you do so, you just send or submit your paper once and get the approval in the first submission. You know that attachments are somehow as important as the main file, the manuscript. And you know that we have some forms, different forms. For example, reviewer suggestion form, consent form, and other forms. Each of them actually has its own importance, significance. Then you have to fill out those forms or tick off the boxes on the website of the journal or conference, and then actually finalize your submission. That's very easy, but it depends on you, whether you have read the website of the journal or conference in advance or not, whether you've read the website of the journal or conference before drafting the paper or not. If you have read before drafting the paper, your responsibility is your task is easy here. Your task, you just do it once and you don't need to revise and resubmit. But if you don't, you have to revise and resubmit and revise and resubmit and wait and revise and resubmit, and finally you're not sure whether you will get the approval or get the acceptance or rejection. That was the reason why I focused and emphasized on that second step. And at the end, the conclusion of this lecture. After these 5+1 steps, I have to remind you that this style of writing is my preferred one. And it is up to you whether to apply these steps I discussed or not. But I believe that this is the shortcut way. This is the easiest way. And if you take this route, this way, you'll succeed 100% guaranteed. For sure, you can take your own way. You can go your own way. But because of a number of reasons I discussed and a number of reasons I couldn't discuss because the time didn't allow me, for example, 40 criteria based on which you should decide whether to publish your paper on journal A or B, on conference A or B. But I couldn't discuss all of them. Because of a number of reasons, I'm sure this way I thought will save your time and money and effort. But this is up to you whether to apply my steps or not. The most common reason most researchers fail to publish at a desired journal or conference is that they do the right thing but at the wrong time. The right thing but at the wrong time. They select the best publisher but after drafting their paper. They select the best journal or conference but after they have written their paper. This is a mistake, a childish mistake, a mistake I expect you not to make. As I said, the number one mistake is this. The number one mistake that most novice researchers make is that they do what they ought to do, but at the wrong time. Most of what I discussed today is the principles of research, and principles are the same. Whether you want to publish your paper in journal A or B or C, doesn't matter. Whether you want to publish your paper by a journal or conference, doesn't matter. Whether you want to publish a thesis, dissertation, or paper, doesn't matter. Because most of what I discussed today is the principles. So the principles do not differ from one discipline to another, from one topic to another, from one publication to another. So you should take them all into account. You have to learn the principles first. I discussed some of them, and actually we have a lot more principles not discussed today, not discussed yet, but in my lengthy course you can actually listen to those lectures as well. And then you have to learn a number of differing features from one journal to the next, from one discipline to the next, from one topic to the next, which make you distinguished one from one another. So you should actually learn both general features or generic features, principles, and some minor rules. In courses I teach, I focus on the shared or common principles as you saw here, as well as distinguishing features, so that you can learn what you need to learn, so that you can learn and apply the principles and rules which are specific to some specific academic texts. You can attend the courses I teach, but if you think that they can improve your CV, your knowledge, otherwise don't attend my courses. You can invite your friends if you are satisfied with the course, if you are satisfied with my lectures. Otherwise, don't invite them. And join us at the links available in the description section. And the last point, we are inviting teachers to join us and teach by SharifzadehAcademy.com. in the hope of helping out students, learners around the world. Good luck and have a nice time.